What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Binge Empire podcast. This is Brian here with my co-host, producer Dave, and friend of the pod, Chase. And today, we're talking episode 6 of the Amazon Prime show Fallout, based on the video game series of the same name. This episode is entitled The Other Player. What a great title for this episode. And before we get going, of course, some housekeeping items. We as a whole are Bingetown TV, not Chase. Me and Dave as a whole are Bingetown TV. There's actually 5 other hosts. We are right now operating on the Binge Empire feed, which is where you're listening to this. We also have another feed called The Core, covering all things Apple TV Plus. Don't want to bore you with the details. I've done this every episode, but we have a extensive library of shows that we've been covering. So if you are interested in Apple TV shows or just any pop culture TV show, odds are we've covered it. So I implore you to explore our library. And oh, by the way, we have a nice Discord community. So if you just can't get enough of us and you want to engage with people who are also watching the same TV shows as you, check us out on Discord/Bingetown TV, or if not that, the link should be in the description, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening along. But okay, episode 6 had a lot of work to do because they were trying to follow up what might be the best episode of the series, certainly an episode that had one of the best scenes of the series. And Chase, you texted us after you watched. I think you were the first one to get to it and just said, hey, if you were going to follow up one of the best episodes, this was a good way to do it. And I completely agree. It was covering a lot of different storylines, so they squeezed a lot in, but it definitely revolved around kind of the, no pun intended, the fallout of the house and Coop conversation from episode 5, because we kind of get a little bit more of the barb of it all from those flashbacks. But besides that, we kind of see all of the characters except Norm and the Buds, if I'm not mistaken, did not make an appearance in this episode. But we get a lot of Lucy and Hank, we get a lot of what's going on in the, vaults 31 through 33. So this was a jam-packed episode. I really liked it. And I think they introduced some new storylines, or maybe just gave us a little bit more of a nudge in the right direction for some storylines that we really didn't have a lot of information to go off of previously. So I thought this was a very strong episode. Chase, what say you?
Yeah, I know I'm not in the minority here. I think this is the second best episode of the season so far, in my opinion. I'm sure there's some other episodes that can compete, but it's coming off the back of what we thought was the best episode of the season and possibly the whole show. And instead of, beating around the bush, they kind of get right to it and give us some more answers and get into the good stuff. And it felt very rewarding to watch this episode and not have to wait another episode to kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. So all around, a great episode for me. If you're a fan of the games, you probably really love this episode as well. And yeah, exceptional for me again.
Yeah, as I always say for Fallout, just another great episode. I probably have to agree with you, Chase. This was my second favorite of the season. I actually had pretty low expectations coming into this week, coming off of that banger, and just thinking like, okay, we're probably just we had such a great episode last week where it was kind of the midway point, a little bit past, and I'm thinking, okay, this might be a setup episode, but no, we get so many more reveals, so much more conversation to dig into. Probably going to be another long podcast episode. Hopefully we'll keep it under an hour, but this show just continues to surprise me, and the reveals are always shocking. So I'm excited to talk about this. This was just another great episode. How can you not say that about this show? It's always going to provide.
Can confirm. Yeah. So why don't we just get into it? And I told these guys before the podcast started, we're going to save the meat for the end of the episode. All the Coop stuff, all the Ghoul stuff, the flashback stuff. We're going to tackle that at the end. So why don't we just start with probably our B plot of this episode, which would be the Lucy and Hank storyline in, Vault Tech HQ, whatever you want to call it. So Lucy wakes up after just being, I'll use the word abducted. I'm not sure if that's appropriate because it's still her dad and he's kind of being nice to her, but she definitely doesn't want to be there. And it's the classic. She finds the note, there's a dress, and she's like, screw this. So she starts exploring. And the first red flag is we see some Legion members kind of walking down the hall. and they don't, it's not fighting on sight with them. So you're like, okay, what's going on here? And she kind of starts exploring, and she sees everybody all buttoned up, kind of like the snake oil merchant was. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? And then we find Hank just kind of playing dad in this simulation vault. He's got the sugar bombs, and he's trying to kind of just like get Lucy on his side. And Lucy's not having any of it. She grabs the scissors and is like, yo, let's go. We're getting out of here. I'm taking you back to the OG vault, and you're going to answer for your crimes. So what are we thinking here?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how much progress Hank has made so far. He's already gone from like 1 to at least 20 people, it seems. So that was really interesting. And I also, that scene in the simulation room with Hank and Lucy, like kind of simulating that like cozy at home vibe. Dad trying to talk to his daughter. I thought that was all great. Him trying to convince her to kind of see his point of view. And to be fair, I think he does a pretty good job of explaining his point of view. And for him, it's that the ends justify the means. And Lucy, she's still very focused on her morals and making the ethical decisions. And so we get to see how that plays out with her trying to arrest him. And I thought it made sense for her character and what she still wanted to do. I'm glad she didn't just easily, succumb to being home with her dad finally,
Yeah.
So one of the big things in our theory talks of, I think last episode or maybe even 2 at this point, was why did it work on the snake oil merchant? And we threw out a bunch of theories. Was it because he was a ghoul? Was it because of how much drugs he was on? Was it because he was willing to accept forgetting, his past and kind of succumb to the machine so it didn't pop his head? And it seems like it's kind of a little bit of everything. But in terms of, definitely, I think Chase was more right with, it's how you want to accept it. Are you willing to let the machine overtake you to clear those memories out? And if you are, it said that to me more in this episode, because we did see the Legion, and as we knew, or at least I'm assuming, is the Legion weren't ghouls, so that unchecks that
Right.
side of it. It could be that maybe the radiation has a point in this, like because they're all exposed, that might make them a little bit easier. But I think I'm fully on Team Chase of, I think it's just because they were willing to let themselves forget. Like it worked on people who were, everyone we had tested on prior to that was someone who hadn't been exposed to the wasteland and the harshness of it. So that helped clear up that for us as well. But this was just amazing. I mean, I kept saying it for a lot of episodes that, Hank's a great villain. And this episode made me question, is he actually a villain? Like, he did such a great job demonstrating, like you said, Chase, the ends justifying the means. And all these people were horrible people, cooking humans, killing them, and they were just barbarians. And Hank is showing that they can live civil lives. It just makes you kind of question free will. And like, sure, these people they forget a lot of things, but they were willing to do that. So this is complicated, man. This whole situation is sticky. I feel for Lucy. I understand her wanting to keep her values, but this was just a perfect example for Hank to make his argument sound. Just an amazing scene. The snake oil merchant as a brainwashed vault tech employee is really funny. I love him.
Sure.
But man, this was great. Hank's amazing. And I guess I'll stop maybe referring to him as a villain and just start calling him Hank, no longer Hank the villain.
So there's a couple things that I want to respond to. I'm not sure how much weight I can put into the theory of it worked better if you want to give yourself over to the machine. So it was because the case study that we see is the snake oil merchant brings in these 2 non-brainwashed Legion members who do just start like scrapping on sight. I would wager that they did not say, hey, we do submit to you, we want to forget everything we know, to Hank. So I think they didn't kind of have that clearance level and say, yes, I want to do it. And
yeah, they were
mm-hmm.
actually one Legion member and one was the NCR member that we saw when Coop goes to visit the
Okay,
NCR.
excuse me. Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah.
Which I was like, please don't kill him. I
Yes.
love that guy. I don't want him to die, like, but I also like now he's not himself anymore, right? So that's part of the question um, about free will. And also, like, to your point, yeah, this kind of does show us maybe it doesn't have to do with them agreeing to it. Like, it could be, like Dave said, it could be maybe they're exposed to high levels of radiation and their brain is just different. So the tool works on them. I wouldn't even count out like maybe Hank just figured out how to make it work,
Yeah, that's also
after all
something
the
too,
trials.
especially with
Yeah.
how efficient they looked putting together the machinery. It also feels like we've just maybe just upgraded them as a whole, and now they can just work on anyone. I was also thinking that, but
If not that, I think my head is going towards the maybe it just works better on people who have that surface level radiation exposure, because his preliminary tests were on people that he was unfreezing and trying. So obviously
Right.
they didn't have that exposure.
Mhm.
But that's where I'm at. Dave, I'm actually surprised to hear you say you're jumping off the hill of him being a
think
villain. I think
yeah.
he is playing God, and he is disguising it very well to Lucy, and
Yes.
he is correctly saying, these surface dwellers fight over the most petty things. You've seen it in your travels in the wasteland, like, and people never change, which is a nice parallel to the war never changes line, but he does drop that. People never change. They're just going to keep on fighting and killing each other. But the insinuation there is that I know better than them. I'm above it all, and I can play God and make it so that they just bend to my will. And
True.
isn't it better to have Maggie over here making trail mix and Claire sharpening pencils than it is to have them living their lives on the surface? And for that, I think it's like I just said, he disguises it very well. He's a smooth talker, but he's not a good guy. He should not be doing this. And it does bring up the point, we kind of glanced over it. He has massively scaled up this operation from one person, the snake oil merchant, to like a room of 30 people. And they are mass producing these chips in unison, which is what we saw. They were kind of passing it around in the assembly line. So I mean, his designs are to scale this up even more, presumably. So I mean, this is heading somewhere bad very quickly. But all of that aside, I am kind of impressed at the operation that Hank has been able to kind of manufacture here for himself. And I'm actually forgetting, where did we leave it with Lucy? Because she is forced to press the button to kind of snap the Legion and the NCR guy into mind control. After that, does she still kind of march him through? And I think she says, we're going to leave all the doors open so that they have the choice to leave if they want to. But everybody's like, no, we want to stay. This is the best life we've ever known.
Yeah.
But where we left this plot line, Lucy is still trying to get him to the vaults to face justice, as it were.
Yeah, I think when they say, "Oh, we're going to leave all the doors open," that's before she is forced to press the button. And I don't remember exactly how it ends, but I think like the look on her face is maybe she needs to reevaluate her plan. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not so sure she's going to end up leaving with him, but never
Yeah,
know.
it's like that. I'm pretty sure it's just they're still in the building. We just don't know if Lucy is actually going to end up leaving the building. Again, Hank made such a really great point there. So the NCR guy is also under the spell now. Like that is what was kind of preventing him from feeling, I guess, any pain there towards the end. I honestly, he almost seemed normal to me after the flip switched. It was clearly the Legion member that was, but um yeah.
I think what's interesting is like their accents and everything change. Like they've become now like these happy, like almost like pre-war people. And even like the NCR guy specifically, like he was very quiet in all the scenes we've seen him. He didn't really talk much. Like
Yeah.
something was obviously, you know, wrong with him. I think maybe just from the war that he's seen and all the stuff he's seen. He's like speaking immediately, and there's no issues with his conversation. So it's almost like they rewire the whole brain, and like Hank says, I think the only thing you'll have is like your knowledge of your language and like knowledge of like life, I guess, or like what it's like
Yeah.
to be a human being, but you won't remember anything that happened to you in the past. So that's interesting too.
Yeah, and it's kind of just interesting to think about. I don't know, the mechanics of it, because they have some level of free will. And I don't think like Hank is pulling levers controlling this entire room of 40 people. So is it just kind of a situation where he says, you guys live at Vault-Tec now and you make these chips and that's your life. And they just kind of carry on and are on autopilot, but also they are able to kind of like converse and have conversations. So there's some level of like, they're people still, which is why like it does kind of fit what Dave's saying. Like they do seem jolly and happy and better off than they were on the surface. So is it a bad thing?
When they said we haven't been happier, or we haven't known like a better place than this, do you think that was the chips talking, or genuinely from the soul, like them saying this is actually, we agree, like this is the best place we've known? You know, like it's just one of those things. It's so hard. I just love that ambiguous comment, because it does make you think, like, is it, like, would they actually be saying that if it wasn't for the chips? Or is the chips, like you said, you know, they took over for a little bit, but they are offering a little bit of clarity to these people? It's tough, man. It was a great kind of throwaway line, but also makes you really think about where they're at mentally, you know, how much are they being mind controlled and how much is free will at this point. So just great scene all around here from Hank. Love Hank. Absolutely.
Love
Hank. Not the villain.
As a character, for sure. Yeah. I don't know if he, not villain Hank.
He is a great actor. I'll give him that. All right. So why don't we go back to the vaults then? And we got our boy Reg, who is in the midst of a flourishing inbreeding support group. Like, his numbers are growing. He is getting a lot of support for this inbreeding support group. Lots of snacks, chugging water. So they're using resources. Meanwhile, Betty, still overseer of the vault, is like, hey, like, you literally can't keep doing this. They kind of have a blow up. Most people are on Reg's side, but eventually it comes to not fisticuffs, but she brings in the guards and it's like, no, this is the way it's going to be. I'm taking away whatever was set aside for you in the charter, your snack provisions, whatever it is, because it always comes back to the snack. So it seems like Betty is starting to crack down in the vault, which we'll get to the flashback. But the funniest thing about the flashback is that Vault-Tec knew which water chips were going to fail. So like, I just have that in the back of my head while we are watching Betty deal with the repercussions of the failing water chip. So yeah, and I guess there's not too much to dissect there, but how are you guys liking this storyline?
Yeah, that flashback scene is great too, because it adds to the scene with Betty and Reg trying to like fight out who's going to gain control.
Yeah.
In a way. And like, it is funny because they're, you know, it shows that Vault-Tec was always scheming, no matter, you know, what it was. You know, we can choose who has water for longer, who gets the failed water chips, like all of that. And the guy's like happy about it when he's saying it, like, oh, this is so exciting. You know, not even like he cares that they're going to impact real people in the future. You know, that's like, it's just, it's a great scene. And I love this scene with Reg when he hops on the piano.
Yep.
And they start playing Uranium Fever, which this is an incredible song, one that's in Fallout 4 as well.
Yep.
And so that was like really cool to see that implemented. And they go into like a whole little dancing and like, you know,
was that all in
dancing
his
around
head
the
though?
tables.
Was that what was going
I
on
think
there?
so, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought, but that was amazing. Yeah.
He's playing like Mary Had a Little Lamb, actually.
Yeah.
Like everyone's looking at him like, what is he doing?
If you haven't heard our Magicians coverage, you know that Binge Town or Binge Empire are big fans of musical numbers, so we appreciate them.
This was great. And one thing I wanted to bring up that I don't think we've covered yet on the show, or at least the episodes I've been on, is how awesome the music is, and how I would say maybe at least one song per episode is a song from one of the video games. The music in the video games is like, it's so engraved in the Fallout universe. It just adds to all this incredible world building in the games, but also now in the show, that like makes you really feel like you're in this sort of like different universe of what happened, you know, after bombs would have dropped in Fallout, you know, after like kind of stuck in this 1960s time period.
Yeah.
And the cool thing too about this song is it's actually a real song from 1960, I believe.
Oh, really?
And I had to look this up because I remember this being in the games, and I was like, "That's a crazy song. They must have made that for the game." And the reality is, this song came out in a time where I guess the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission set like artificially high prices on uranium because they're gearing up for this whole nuclear, they're trying to build up their nuclear arsenal to compete with, Russia and China and whoever. And so I think the fact that they bring a song like that, that's like real in our world, that is, historically kind of important, or, you know, historic, like about the time that people lived in, it is just adds another layer to the world building. And I mean, kudos to whoever does, shout out to whoever does the score and everything, because it's just been incredible throughout the whole show.
Yeah, for sure.
They always go to the end credits with one of those old timey style songs. And it's funny because I thought Uranium Fever was a shoo-in for like a video game only song, but you're saying it was actually a song from the 60s. And it's like a coin flip with a lot of these songs. Is it real? Is it not? Some just fit the 60s aesthetic or whatever. And some are very like Fallout specific. What's the one? I don't want to set the world on fire. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a real one too. Honestly, I think most of them,
that's a
if
real
not
one?
all of them, are real songs. I wouldn't say any of them, like none of them were made for the games or for the show, but that one is definitely a real one too.
That's getting added to B Tom's library right after this.
Yeah, you better believe it. Uranium Fever.
My favorite song is Big Iron, which is in the first episode of this season. And if I was on the podcast at that point in time, I would have brought that up.
The one episode you weren't
on. I love that song. It's like my favorite in all the games. Marty Robbins is a great musician, and like that is just iconic to me. So
okay, well, I'll check that one out too. Now, but the music slaps. So I'm very glad that you gave us a little aside to address that, because since season 1, they've done a great job with it. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off though, Dave.
No, the only thing I wanted to bring up in terms of the Betty-Reg rivalry is, both of them aren't necessarily in the wrong. This does play into the whole overarching theme of just, these sides, but, neither of them are wrong. Betty is trying to keep them alive, whether that's for Vault Tech purposes or her own purposes. She makes a valid point. Like, them just feasting on all these sugary and salty snacks are certainly not helping the cause of fixing the water shortage. But at the same time, all these people have been trapped in this vault for so long. All of them have been just so anxious and pressured by all the rules that, of course, that this was inevitably going to erupt. But I don't think either of them are necessarily wrong. But I think Reg needs to wake up a little bit and understand that, yeah, we could be losing some lives here if we don't actually kind of buckle down a little bit.
Well, I think Reg is not too concerned with the long term.
Yeah.
And I think there is an aspect where he is kind of trying to undercut Betty's power influence and getting some of that for himself. I'm not sure if he is trying to like become the overseer, if he just likes being liked by everybody around him. Mm-hmm. In terms of it, Betty is a pretty interesting character right now, because within the last 2 episodes, she has had this safety net taken out from under her. Vault 31, she now knows that Buds is gone. And what she thought was, okay, we're going to repopulate Vault 32 so we can have this community and like a friendly neighbor again, so we can have each other's back. The last conversation with Steph was essentially Steph giving her the middle finger and saying, experiment's over, like we're each on our own and you don't have a working water chip anymore. So I think Betty is kind of in panic mode and trying to kind of keep it all together while she has this thorn in her side of Red cultivating this following of inbred people who are just eating the damn snacks and using all their resources. So I think like Betty is now probably trying to be an actual overseer and keep the vault functioning and alive rather than prioritizing the experiment at this point.
I want to get into what you brought up about the failed water chips that was mentioned at the beginning of the episode. We haven't necessarily talked about the flashback yet, but the water chips we are talking about now. So I want to ask this. We already had known that the vaults 31, 32, and 33 were special vaults. They they had a different plan, correct? Like there was something special about these three that were different than most of the other vaults. If that's the case, why have a failed water chip in this special vault that we knew? Unless there was like a maybe not a miscommunication, but some kind of misunderstanding between the higher ups of like the highest of the highest knew that vault 31, 32, and 33 were going to be special, but then maybe the next set of people down weren't aware of that, and when they were like, okay, fuck this, we don't need to give them, a water chip. So that was just one thing that kind of caught, like, something that you had brought up that made my head think a little bit. Like, was there a purpose that they would have screwed this so-called special vault trio, or was it a mistake? It's more so just like an ambiguous question. I'm not looking for an actual answer. It's just something that I'm thinking about as we're talking about it.
Chase, you want to take it first?
No, that's a good question. I actually had some thoughts about that too. And now that you bring it up too, like I'm thinking it could be, there could be some ulterior motive. Maybe somebody doesn't like Bud Askins and they wanted to kind of mess with his plan. But I also think, Bud and the team that's responsible for the experiments going on in 31, 32, 33, and based on Hank's, decisions in the past and now, I feel like they didn't think it would take this long for them to like complete their mission, which I guess was, especially for Bud, was to have, Bud's buds come up and kind of retake over the land and set up the new civilization or whatever they want. And so I think it could be oversight. Like maybe they just knew it wasn't gonna last that long, but they're like, we'll be out of there by then. Like just throw it in our vault, it's fine. Or throw it in their vault, it's fine. Like they'll be up by then. Or it could just be like, who knows? They could have been rushing to get all these vaults set up, and it was one of the last ones to get set up. Because I think Bud's kind of pitching that whole thing in season 1, and like maybe it's not fully developed, and they just unfortunately got one of the chips that wasn't tested. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the whole like development of vaults 31, 32, and 33 being special wasn't a thing until Bud himself was there and like actually doing experiments. But go ahead, B Tom, so if you want to give your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I do think it's a couple things, and he keeps it like, I think the special thing about the trio was that it was a trio with management in Vault 31. Like that was the specialness of it. My other point specific to why would they give this special management vault trio a faulty water chip? The first thing is we haven't heard anything about Vault 32 not having a good water chip. So they also have the safety net of if they knew 32 had a good water chip, the overall vault community should be okay. And going on top of that, we learned from the Ghoul that this is not the only special vault or management vault. So, hey, maybe it's an experiment within the experiment, seeing, okay, how would this special vault react to having one faulty water chip if the other ones have all good water chips? Maybe there's another one where both were faulty water chips. How do they respond? We know Vault Tech is messed up like that, so maybe it was just another variable for them to collect information.
I like it. I like your quick-wittedness on those responses because I genuinely didn't have a response. So I like those ones. So we'll stick with it.
So while we're in the vaults, I think we only got one scene in Vault 32. No Steph on screen, but we get Chet and our boy Davey. I love Davey.
Yeah, you better love Davey. You better love Davey. With 2 Davids on the pod, most of you guys don't know this. We keep calling him Chase, but his government name, Davey.
Don't give out my government name.
You know what's funny is our other friend is also who watches Fallout, who we've referenced, is Dave.
Yeah.
So if we ever got him on the podcast, I would just be surrounded by Daves. Anyway, though, Davey in Vault 32 goes over to Chet and is like, hey, have you seen Woody? He didn't show up for chess club or maybe they were playing checkers. I forget exactly what it was. Checkers. But then everybody's laying it on thick, like, hey, Mazel Tov, Chet, man. I hear you're getting married. He's like, no, we're not even engaged. And they're like, oh, well, there's a poster. And if you know anything about the vaults, if anything goes on the bulletin board, it's gospel. It's borderline official. So he goes and he sees, and Steph has set their wedding date for, I think, the next day. And this is all news to Chet, who is just poor Chet playing catch up. I think he has the damn baby in like the wrap. So, Chet has been a little bit underutilized this season, but I think he really already has been red pilled or blue pilled, whatever the wake up pill is. But like everything is starting to be clear for Chet. I am hoping that he either gets in touch with Norm or Lucy. I want him to kind of get a lifeline to the surface so that he can get out of. This is becoming a very threatening situation for our boy Chet, because as long as he plays along with Steph, I think he's fine. But the second he falls out of line, oh my gosh, I don't know what Steph's going to do. But what say you?
I mean, could you imagine Chet going up to the surface with the baby? I think that thing's stuck to his chest. I don't think he has any choice there. It's clear like Steph knows that he heard the conversation between her and Woody, that he knows things that he probably shouldn't know. And so I see this as her just trying to make sure that he's put in a position where he doesn't feel like he can betray her or abandon her, force him to marry her, and he's going to be trapped in the situation where he's going to stay quiet and hopefully do what's best for him, Steph, and the baby. That's what Steph wants him to do. And so I just see it kind of playing out that way. He's so close to, finally doing something, it seems. But, they add another important factor here to the scene that we learn is that Woody is missing. And so that's going to be really interesting to see how much Chet really, how much he really cares about Woody and what's going on. If he's just going to forget that these things happened, maybe that'll convince him like, oh no, I don't want to mess with Steph. Like she'll kill me, make me go missing. Or maybe this is going to really convince him to be like, we need to do something, or I need to do something and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, it feels like Stephanie chose Chet because he maybe comes across as weak and easily just malleable to whatever she wants to do. But at the same time, he's a lot more competent that we've seen, obviously, than other people. We have Davey, who can't get the directions right of the vault. So Chet is like this weird player for Steph where he's capable, but not capable enough. And that's, to her, a weakness of Chet. And that's why she feels like she can just take advantage of him. But I do think at some point Chet will have that, breakaway moment or, stand up for himself moment against Steph. So I think their back and forth is getting definitely to a point that it's bubbling of tension, of Chet really wants to get out of there and Steph really doesn't want to let him go, it seems like. And we'll see how that boils over. And in terms of Woody missing, it doesn't feel like, I don't think he's dead. If I had to guess, the safest bet would probably be they just threw him in cryo and just he's gone, That's where I'm at with Woody. I don't think he's dead, though.
So, look, the Vaulties don't seem like ones to question authority very much, but it's such a small community, and Woody is like one of the noteworthy people in this small community. So, like, even the Vaulties would be asking questions like, where is Woody? And they would need some tangible explanation for that, because, like, people can't just go missing in a very finite vault. Right. Like, I'm sure they have this entire place mapped out. So my guess is that Steph is maybe just giving him a stern talking to and making sure that he is not a loose end, and giving him the deal like, yo, if you tell anybody what you heard me and Betty talking about, like, then we're going to have a problem. Mm-hmm. But even that would still be a loose end. So that I really don't know where he is, but I couldn't see a scenario where like he's just in cryo and Steph is like, yeah, Woody's gone.
Yeah, right. I agree. I'm with you.
I think the one advantage Steph has, though, is that she is the overseer and she can explain things by using Vault 31, for example, as a place where he could have gone. Like, that's they've done marriages between the vaults typically. What's to say he didn't get selected to be married to someone in Vault 31 and sorry, he just wanted to go without saying bye. Not much you can do. Now, I don't know if everyone's going to believe that, right? Yeah. Chet's probably not going to believe it, but I would say it's out of the question. Like she is in such a powerful position. She can make people disappear, I think, and get away with it. And we've seen how like
Yeah.
gullible, people are in the vault. So
That's well said. No, that's actually a good point. Maybe I'm overthinking it because they, like I said, don't really seem to question authority too much. But that's really all for our vault scene. I think we just have to kind of hit this quick Maximus and Thaddeus scene where they're getting away from the Brotherhood before we can get into the ghoul and the flashback and all that. So exactly that. Maximus and Thaddeus are on the run. Thaddeus, unfortunately, cannot keep the body armor, which sucks because, the Brotherhood can track it. They're going to come for it and claim it, whatever. So they're on the lam and they're just kind of camping out like, hey, where do we go now? What do we do? And neither of them really has a good answer, but a little bit of comic relief. They still have the cold fusion. I guess what would you like? That thing is not cold fusion itself, but it's also not a reactor. What would you call that, Chase? Like the blue orb?
I don't know. I just think of it as like it's this cold fusion like
vial
core
battery, I guess, or like core.
battery.
Yeah, like
I like that.
It kind of runs.
Well,
I don't know. We'd have to get into the
games,
science of what cold fusion even is. I'm assuming it's like it's energy source that like just fuels itself eternally.
Well, I guess
right?
I only ask it because the things you put in the games to power up the body armor is a fusion core, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So the blue orb is not that. I would not say that is a fusion core unless it is.
No, they're different.
Yeah. Okay.
The fusion cores in the games do run out of energy eventually. Like they're not limitless. And that's like, back to the scene where we find out that the Brotherhood might be able to manufacture them endlessly at Area 51. They need to because they do run out eventually. And you need one to power up your armors. You need one, to power up any robots or other machines. But no, I think these are two very different things.
Like, does this power the cores, though? So they can't create cores without this, right? Like, is this cold fusion at its purest, we'll say, I guess? Is that one way to put it?
I think the cold fusion, this is like the cold fusion invention. Technology or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it, like, whatever they use to make the fusion cores could probably run on some other energy source, but they don't have another energy source right now.
Gotcha.
Because there's no energy out there at all. Like, there's no power plants. There's no,
so they do need this. Like, this is the object everyone's after.
Yeah. Okay. Because if you have this, like we saw in season 1, Moldaver shows that you could light up the whole city with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could bring back society and civilization and build cities up if you had this thing. So it's like the ultimate energy source.
Okay.
And yes, I don't think it's been explicitly said, but I doubt the Brotherhood could make and manufacture the fusion cores without having this blue orb. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to bring it up because I wanted to get the terminology right, because I know fusion cores are a thing and they themselves are important, but they are not this blue orb. So for lack of a better term, I'm just going to call it the blue orb, and we're just going to run with the fact that that is probably the most important technology in the wasteland right now, and it is in the hands of Thaddeus and Maximus. But kind of the comic relief here is that Thaddeus is like, so we're selling this thing, right? Like we're just finding the highest bidder and we're getting rid of this thing. And Maximus is like, no, absolutely not. We can't do that. And they kind of have a conversation about where they're from. And Thaddeus has very humble beginnings. And Maximus reflects, I guess I was one of the lucky ones. I got to see Shady Sands and grow up there. So I remember what reasonable, morally upstanding people are like. But they don't really get to hang around the campfire for too long because Dog Meat comes with the ghoul's hat and kind of leads them right back to where the ghoul winds up. And not really too much else to say for Maximus and Thaddeus. So why don't we catch up with the ghoul and figure out how he got to that barn or whatever that Thaddeus and Maximus stumble upon him with Dog Meat. So beginning of the episode, Homie is still impaled in New Vegas and nobody's giving him the time of day. The one thing that surprised me is that, his parcel, his bag filled with Radaway was all over the ground and nobody had already stolen those resources from him. I think, if you walked upon that situation in the wasteland, you're like, oh, I'll be taking the vials. Toodly do, Mr. Ghoul. Have fun with your impalement. Yeah. But nobody did do that. He's reaching for him, can't get him, and he's slipping in and out of consciousness. And this is where we get the flashbacks. But before we get to the flashbacks, I think I kind of want to go with just this Ghoul present day storyline because he tries to get him. He is incapable of getting himself out of this predicament. And night falls, and then this masked hooded figure, big monster looking dude, just snaps the bar in half and just kind of like drags him away into this barn. And honestly, Chase, I kind of want to hand it off to you because I feel like this has big video game implications. I recognize he is revealed to have like a green face, and the name is escaping me of the character from Fallout 4 who plays a pretty heavy hand. I remember it was a pain in the ass because you have to go like way into the irradiated zone to get to his lair or whatever. So you had to get like a bodysuit. I forget his name, but he was a good character. And I don't want to say that this is that guy from the games, but definitely someone from the same race. And are we calling them mutants, or what would they be?
These are super mutants. Not just mutants. And this scene for me was like my favorite scene in the whole episode. Even though it was like a very minuscule portion of the episode, I just felt very, very, very good seeing this. It felt very rewarding. This is one of those things, super mutants, as you mentioned, are in the games. They are like, as they're explained, they're like a different race of human. Essentially, they're just mutated humans who are super strong and big. Like they're all that big, and green as well. And I was just kind of waiting for us to finally be introduced to super mutants because there's so many aspects to this universe that we hadn't seen yet. Death Claws were one of them, and we got those. Super mutant kind of felt like the natural next step, and I didn't expect to get it this soon. But this scene was awesome for me as a video game enjoyer. And it was kind of like a double whammy. One, we're getting introduced to mutants. Number two, I don't know if you caught the voice and then the face, but the super mutant is being played by Ron Perlman.
I did not catch that actually at all. Yeah. I did not. That is awesome.
What's really cool about this is Ron Perlman was actually really involved with the games outside of Fallout 4. He was the person who did the intro voiceover and the end game voiceovers when you complete the game. So whatever, ending you get, he voiced all of those. And he's like the original person that says, war never changes.
Okay.
And we also get to hear that line earlier from Hank. And so it's like this, we go full circle with that. And so that was a really
He
cool
says
moment.
People never change, right? Is that
like,
what he says? He says people never change. Is that what he says here? I think or something like that.
I think Hank does.
Hank does, but I think we get somebody else says war never changes.
Barb and Coop say it in the flashback.
That's what it is. Yeah. That's so. I mean, that was like full circle for me. I love this, and I was like just so giddy on my couch watching this. Like,
yeah, I can imagine.
Incredible.
Yeah, I'll hop in here and just say. So we did get confirmation that this is mutant, super mutant. Now it becomes, how is this different than a ghoul? Ghouls are exposed to high amounts of radiation. I don't know if this is something that gets into spoiler territory or not. So this might be, feel free to just stay quiet, Chase. But, I'm not sure if these mutants are, children of ghouls. Is that what makes a mutant? I have no idea. So that's just something that came across my mind as we got introduced to mutants.
I would agree with Dave. Chase, if you know the right answer, I would keep your lips sealed because I feel like I remember from the games that there is an answer to how super mutants come to be, but for the life of me, I forget it. So I kind of want it to be spoiled as well, or don't want it to be spoiled as well. But they're definitely unique from ghouls. That's for sure, is the only thing I want to say. And unless we want to keep talking about and theorizing about how they're made, I kind of want to bring it back to our boy the Ghoul. While he was impaled, he was starting to go feral, and he was doing the whole I'm Cooper Howard. I have a daughter named Janie. That's my parent. So he was like borderline feral ghoul. And then when he's found by the super mutant who strings him up, he's like, here's some uranium. Like, it's good for you. It's bad for humans. And seemingly that gives him a nice second wind of energy. So, like, that is definitely a new aspect to the whole ghoul mechanics that we hadn't had before is, you know, uranium straight into the wounds makes them good again.
Yeah, so this was interesting. One thing I think we've kind of been assuming is that it was Radaway that is helping Coop or the Ghoul Coop, but I'm not so sure because this seems to have like sort of the uranium directly has like an accelerated effect. So I'm wondering, and this could be something I should know from the games, but I'm wondering if it's actually radiation or like, you know, radiation juice or some kind of um, uranium substance that
Related,
he's
yeah.
actually injecting every time he takes those. That's keeping him like alive and functioning in that ghoul form. And like, I guess that would kind of make sense when we think back to like Thaddeus and whatever he took. Whatever he took to make him into a ghoul was kind of similar to like what uh, Coop kind of sprays on himself at times in his wounds to heal. And like that turns Thaddeus into a ghoul. And so I'm thinking maybe we've been thinking about it the wrong way. It's not Radaway that's actually keeping him from going feral. It could be like using the substance or whatever it is that radiation. But I'm not totally sure. It's unclear. But it adds another layer for sure.
I love that we got this kind of answer for our last podcast because one of the things I was talking about was he has a giant hole in his stomach. Like, how is this going to get repaired? Is it just going to heal itself? Is it going to repatch? Now I'm wondering, is he just going to be walking around the wasteland with this uranium in him for the rest of his time, or will it eventually be able to get pulled out, you know, or is it just stuck in there? I'm assuming it's just going to be stuck in there, but I'm glad we got that answer for that. That was something I honestly thought it was just going to be kind of maybe glossed over or would just heal itself over time, but we got a pretty immediate answer, which I thought was very nice. I was not expecting that. And yeah, like you're saying, Chase, we definitely have to think of the Radaway and uranium and all this a little differently now. I think it seems like the uranium aspect of it is what is saving him, or at least the radiation part of it.
And I'm wondering if he'll just have this hole filled in with a glowing green uranium stick indefinitely, or we've seen their healing kind of presents as like the flesh grows over, so maybe it'll like morph into him, whatever. But in this scene, which for all the reasons we've just been talking about was pretty awesome, the mutant, or the super mutant, excuse me, drops some knowledge where I have the quote here, maybe it's paraphrasing, but ghouls, mutants, we're kin. We should fight against the ones who made us this way, the ones who set this all in motion, ... the Enclave. So he kind of name drops the Enclave, and given the episode title, I am to assume that maybe this Enclave could be the other player that Mr. House has been insinuating to us. I'm just all over the place.
I'm going to hop in here and just say, I thought it was crazy to me that I don't know for how long and when it kind of clicked for me, but I was always under the impression that Vault-Tec and Robert House were the same party. And this episode really shined a light on that is not the case. They're business partners, but like enemies at the same time. You know, they're looking out for themselves. They're doing deals with each other, but it's just, I don't know if that was always meant to be, and I don't know if it was ever strictly revealed, but this was like a wake up call for me. Like, holy shit! Like, Robert House isn't with Vault-Tec. There is someone else that owns Vault-Tec that is the big player in all this. That isn't Robert House. The Enclave drop was amazing, I thought personally. We finally get a name to this third party. Of course, we still don't know really anything about the Enclave, but we finally at least have a name to go by, and that these are the people that are responsible for all this. How that plays into the Robert House, you know, calculations and where they fall in the past in their role. We obviously get a little bit in the flashback that we'll be covering here in a second, but I just no impressions other than it feels like they could just be I was going to say Legion, but that's not a good word because we have the Legion, but like it's a group of people of just basically the most powerful and richest people besides Robert House that are in charge of the Enclave, kind of like an Illuminati ordeal is what I would assume just from what we gathered in this. But this was an amazing reveal. Again, one of those things like in last episode when Robert House is talking to Coop in the past, and that was an amazing scene. Like this is one of those moments again where it's like, okay, we're about to dump. It's a quick scene, but we're going to dump a lot of lore behind this like couple lines here and get your brains racing. So I really love this from them. Again, it sets up questions about what are mutants exactly versus the ghouls, and then what is the Enclave or who are they, and when are we going to see them next? So I'm super excited about that reveal.
Yeah, I will say I feel very validated with this name drop because when the mutant says the people who set all this in motion, I think he's talking about more than just the experiments. I do think he's also talking about the people that created this universe that they're in now, where there was a fallout, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now convinced that they were the group that dropped the bombs. But yeah, if you remember last week on the pod, I alluded to having some sort of idea.
Yeah.
And I'll just say it feels good to be right in some capacity. And I think one of the things that really makes me confident too is that if you remember to the last episode as well, Mr. House, as I like to call him, he says that he believes whoever is responsible for dropping the bombs is also the person responsible for the demon in the snow.
Right.
I.e. the Death Claws. And so that just kind of seals the deal a little bit to me. Like there hasn't been another group that we have had name dropped that could be relevant yet. And, if you also look back to, we can get into parts from season 1, but I did mention that we saw a little bit about this faction in season 1 very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
And we get kind of a return to the person that we saw. So that's a different scene, but we'll get into that.
Why don't we just kind of get into it now?
Does
that person have a name? Because my notes just have him as Ben Linus, which is his iconic role from Lost, Ben Linus. But does he have a name?
His name is Siggy Wilzig.
Actually?
Siggy Wilzig?
Siggy Wilzig. That's what I have in my notes.
I kind of like that name.
That's what it says.
I like Siggy, yeah. Siggy. All right, so we got Siggy. And so why don't we just get it? Season 1, he was at that facility where he was kind of raising dog meat.
Yeah.
What is that? Our vision of the Enclave? Is that kind of what you're saying? Like we saw him briefly in season 1. Is that?
Yeah. So from what I remember, they briefly mentioned that he escaped the Enclave with the cold fusion, right? Because he's the first person that puts the cold fusion into his neck.
Mm-hmm.
And so when after last episode, I was thinking back, like, who else could it be? And I remember them being name dropped. And, I had some insider information because they are, in the games. And I'm thinking, like, that's the only other faction we haven't had really a lot of yet. Right. And it makes a lot of sense now that, they're responsible for cold fusion. They were, I guess Siggy himself was responsible for the cold fusion in, like, present day.
Mm-hmm.
And also maybe was involved or somehow responsible for it in the past. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's true now. Like he was the inventor, or if he was
was there.
He was there at least. So that was really cool and also crazy. Like we still haven't got answers for how Moldaver ended up into this, 200 years in the future. We haven't got it for Siggy now either. So there's still a lot to unpack there. But anyway, so so I just kind of put the dots together and he's he ended up being a pretty big player. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wasn't ready. Like you had mentioned, that it was someone that we had seen in the past. And this was definitely a face that at least, I remember seeing when he appeared on the screen in this episode, but definitely a face that I would not have pulled out from our discussion in the last episode. I totally honestly had forgotten about him. But one of the genius things of Fallout is being able to so early on plant these seeds for events that just can become big reveals later on. So I don't feel cheated out of this as like this is the person responsible. We've seen them already. So this was just a great, I think we had brought up, if this was like an unseen faction or unseen person that we hadn't met yet. I know Siggy isn't necessarily, the head of the Enclave, but he was a part of it. And so having that from the beginning here and not it just being a random new face that we hadn't been introduced to is that much more gratifying. Now, when the reveals of the Enclave start to unfold themselves, I'm sure those will be some new faces. But the fact that it is Siggy from season one being at least the primary connection of the Enclave here for the reveal was amazing. So shout out to Fallout, man.
Yeah, it was good stuff for sure. So, I mean, why don't we take these flashbacks from the top, and there's kind of a flashback within the flashback. It's the continuation of the New Vegas conversation between Barb and Coop, but also the flashback of Barb going through Vault Tech preparations kind of
Before
for,
she says she's gonna,
yeah,
before we
like
drop the bombs ourselves.
her day to day. And it was like really funny just how, I don't know, dehumanizing it was that she's in like an advertising meeting where this guy's like, well, yeah, when we drop the bombs on LA, we're going to have multiple 5 kiloton bombs. But for advertising purposes, the 10 kiloton bomb just looks way better, way more impactful. It evokes, and it's like, it, we've been talking about this. Like, how much can you kind of just wipe away? Barb saw that this end was inevitable, and she was just trying to carve out her best future for her and her family, but she was clearly just going through the motions in this day to day. And it was like, did she understand she couldn't stop it? I, I don't know, but it was kind of giving us a day in the life of Barb, where it's like, if you are just kind of an upper level, but not the tippy top level in a company like Vault Tech, what can you do other than play along and hope that you get the best for yourself?
Yeah, I think this clears up a lot of the questions we had around Barbara, at least in terms of how quote unquote good of a person she is. You could see it during the day to day of her. Like it was obviously very funny, just them trying to market the end of the world, basically. And but you could tell from her face that she was so sick of this all. She didn't want to have to make these decisions, but she has to because again, her family is on the line here, and she wants to make sure, like you said, B Toms, that she has the best possible outcome from herself. So I think Barb is just a victim of being in the position that she's in. I think again, it's kind of confirmed here that it wasn't necessarily her saying we should drop the bombs. Like, why not just make it us? She was forced into that position. But again, this is all just for
Yeah.
her to have the betterment for her family. So she's in a tough position, man. Like, I get where she's coming from, and it sucks to be the person to suggest, like, hey, why don't we just do it? But if you are for sure knowing that the world is going to end, there is 0% or zero way to save it, you kind of just got to play along, and it sucks. And that obviously drove a huge wrench between her and Coop's relationship. And we won't see fully how that, we haven't even seen fully how that's impacted. They haven't even reconnected yet. And they probably still have unhashed things that they want to say to each other. But like, yeah, now you just got to feel for Barb. It's not her that she's a villain. She's just a product of the corporation, and it sucks to be her. I definitely feel for her. So I'm glad to see that Barb wasn't as bad as we originally kind of thought her to be.
Yeah, this definitely redeems Barb in my mind. Because as you mentioned, we were all thinking like she's not a good person. Like she's up to something,
Mhm.
something sketchy. And then it turns out she's been threatened. Her family's been threatened. It's deeper. And she has like conversation with Coop. They're yelling at each other, and Coop's like, what about someone out there? There's, millions of families out there just like us. What about
Yeah.
their daughters and their wives and their husbands? Like, how are you going to do that to them? And so she kind of explained like, I had no choice. I was forced. And, we see that she starts to ask questions about cold fusion as well. She wants to know how it's transported, all this stuff. And so towards the end of that scene and the episode, we get to see that she gets kind of involved with Coop now. And
Mm.
maybe, she has fully changed her mind of just trying to save herself and her family, and is fully along with the plan for Coop to kind of steal the cold fusion, stop the bombs from dropping. And I think this is going to be an incredible story that they put together here, and I'm excited to see what happens.
So you took that end scene. I guess we'll get to it. Coop drugs Hank, opens the briefcase, and finds this gun. Barb comes in, uses it to like extract that. You took that as Barb is now on Coop's side, not that she was defending Vault-Tec's interests and kind of double downing. Like, I know you're trying to intervene. I'm going to stop it. I'm taking the cold fusion out of Hank. So,
Yeah, I mean, my impression was that, and I think part of the reason I had that impression was because they showed us that scene of her asking about cold fusion when it kind of seems like she's questioning, like, what is she even doing here?
yeah.
Mhm.
And so I think she has changed her mind to, instead of just continue to roll with the plan that she's been given and told to, I think she's ready to try and do something good that she thinks is good. Um, and maybe they're going to try to steal it and run away with it. I really have no idea, but it seemed to me like she was taking it out of Hank's neck because she was going to do something with it. Like, I think initially, right, it was just supposed to be delivered to Robert House. And I don't
Right.
know why they would, like, why she would take it out now and then go walk it over or something. But I mean, unless it's to like kind of prove to Coop that she has to keep doing the job. But I feel like after their whole talk and everything, that she might
Yeah.
change her mind.
Yeah, I took it also that Barb is now on Coop's side as well, as like this is an act of rebellion against Vault Tech. Um, and it also kind of makes sense if they are working together going forward, because that would explain how Janie, maybe not fully explain, but it does kind of hint us at how Coop had Jeannie when the bombs dropped, and then maybe sent Jeannie with Barbara. Like he's holding Jeannie, he takes her to Barbara, and they're like, okay, the bombs drop. Like, you got to get Jeannie and yourself somewhere safe. Let's take them to cryo. So maybe there's like we're gonna have another undercover agent in Vault-Tec and Barbara. They talk this all out, and so it kind of helps. Definitely makes sense of the whole day that it dropped, with how Coop was with Jeannie, and then all of a sudden Jeannie's with Barbara frozen in Vault-Tec. Like, how did that happen? So if they end up kind of working together, I think that's where my mind is at. But if she is still with Vault-Tec and she takes the gun for more, I guess I won't say selfish, because again, it's all for the family, but I would be shocked.
Okay. No, I like that, and I kind of am with you, but I still am not ready to fully say that Barb
Okay.
is redeemed. I think she kind of willingly played the part. I'm not going to say, have we ever seen, one of you said she got threatened. I don't think anybody threatened her like, if you don't do our bidding, we're going to kill you.
It
It's
was the
just
family. It was the guy in the past.
No, he
Ziggy,
directly
like,
says, like, you'll end up dead
really.
and
he
your
says
family will
he says
too.
your
Yeah.
family will be killed, and the reason he's making that threat to her is because his family is also under the same threat of we will kill your family if you don't deliver this message to Barbara.
Got it. Oh, okay. I completely missed
Yeah,
that.
so no,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, that's why we have the podcast.
yeah, so she is definitely being kind of forced to do this. And so like she gets told that news, and then that's when it transitions to her in the room saying, "We will drop the bombs."
Got it. Okay. Well, that was very important thing that I missed. Okay. Yeah. No,
So is she
I am more
redeemed?
so on your end.
Is she redeemed?
Yeah, kind of, I guess. Well,
Yeah,
we'll see
give it a
how
little
she's
bit of
Gotta see
acting
what
time.
when she
happens.
gets thawed out
Yeah,
eventually.
yeah, yeah.
But no, that is, you guys were kind of talking about it. That's like the one missing piece. What happens on the day of the bombs where it goes from Coop and Janie to Barb and Janie getting frozen kind of together? So
The,
that's still kind of a burning question for me.
the other thing I
Go
want
ahead.
to talk about is, did Hank know he had cold fusion? The cold fusion orb or whatever, the blue ball in his neck? Or do you think he was just genuinely just had no idea what was in the briefcase? He was just guarding it because the bigwigs said, like, did they just like kind of drug Hank, inject him with it? He had no idea what happened, and he's just carrying, and they're just like, carry this briefcase around, like, did, because then I feel like that also kind of sets up Hank as, was he actually kind of in from the very beginning, or was it just like he's been, not that that downplays Hank's importance in anything, but it's just like, was he back in the day more just an errand, actually just an errand boy and just being forced to do things without even knowing what they're doing, or did he actually know that cold fusion existed or not? That's just one thing that I was thinking of here.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we know that, we know that the Enclave now had agents in Vault Tech. Potentially, they're the ultimate owners of Vault Tech secretly. Um, I don't think it's out of the question that like there could be other double agents, like potentially Hank. And
Yeah.
I started to have this epiphany the other night, trying to figure out like why Hank would immediately contact Robert House when he comes out. I think a potential there that
Right.
he was the double agent for House, within Vault Tech maybe,
Mhm.
and that's why he's the one chosen to deliver it. There's also the
Mhm.
potential that maybe Hank works for the Enclave and like that's why he was chosen. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, but I think there definitely the chance that like, he obviously we know that he knows more than
Yes.
Barbara knows he knows, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yes, yes, it does.
Yeah.
So Barbara is not necessarily aware of what everyone around her is doing or a part of, and there's layers to this whole thing.
Right.
And so I think Hank could be another one of those layers, double agent in some capacity. It also brings me back to like my predictions and questions about like Steph, what her backstory was, what her connection was to Hank and his keepsake. You know,
Mm.
could she be a double agent of some sort for some other organization? Like we don't know, but I think there's definitely potential now that we've seen that that's a thing that's happening within Vault-Tec. So I think that's just adds another layer to the whole everything that's going on, you know?
Mm.
We love a good layer. I don't know. Is there anything else we really need to get into? I don't think we talked or mentioned that we actually got the scene with Barb negotiating with House's proxy for the exchange of the mind chips for cold fusion technology, which I guess makes sense because we know Voltec has the mind chips, but it's worth saying. I also just, now that we know that's House's proxy, I love that House has a proxy, so it's always worth mentioning whenever he's on screen.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think what's interesting in that scene, Hank is there and he's like super interested in the
Yes.
tech.
Yes.
And
Okay.
like this is why I also think there's like could be a tie in between him and House. Like maybe he is secretly the guy and he's supposed to continue this for House when they get out of the vaults. And even though he's giving it to Vault Tech, maybe he was going to backstab Vault Tech and only do what House wanted.
Right.
I don't know. And I think this scene, well, this episode too, like made me sort of question if Hank is even involved in the future Enterprise ventures, because I don't even know if we've had a scene where he mentions it. And it
Right.
seems like his motives are very different from the future Enterprise ventures potential motives. And
Right.
it's hard for me to picture like putting these chips on people and then launching some, airborne biological weapon to change them into
Right, like, the
mutants to
machine's
promote the
working
company,
now,
right?
and so there's not really, I'm with you. Hank being in that scene and having, like, a real deep interest in the cold fusion was worthy enough for me to make a note of it because I wasn't sure how to take it. Like, yes, it just seems like he's maybe, overzealous and just interested in everything that's going on because he wants to become higher up, or again, did he recognize it already and he wanted confirmation and potentially this double agent thing. I think this is all part of what makes Fallout great is these questions that they can give us answers to, but like slowly spoon feed us without us being like, okay, just give it to us all. Like what are you making us wait for? The one thing I do want to say, Chase, is you texted us. I don't know if you want to bring this up on pod as like a prediction or whatever, but you had texted us um, saying that me and B Toms were of the idea that Robert House could be a robot or at least an android in the future, but you kind of texted and maybe had other ideas. I don't know if you want to shout those out on the podcast here and make your claims here.
Yeah, I won't say I have ideas about like what happens to Robert House,
Right.
but I think like, I will say before present day. So like in present day, I don't think that House is alive. And this has nothing to do with playing the games or anything.
Mhm.
Like it's totally my assumption from watching the show and the way that the Enclave stuff has kind of unfolded. House in the episode where he talks to Coop in his, lair with all the TVs and screens and everything, he says that he doesn't like not being the house. He doesn't like
Right.
not knowing who's really in charge. And he makes it clear that whatever this third party is a threat to him. I think they would see that him the same way. Like, I think the Enclave would see House as a threat as well.
Right.
And the fact that we get like death claws in Vegas where House is supposed to be, I think the Enclave may have found a way to kill him or get him out of the picture because he's their biggest threat, right? Because
Right,
he's
'cause-
Yeah.
probably one of the only people that know they exist
That's
that
a good
is
point.
in the wasteland.
It's a good point that the
So,
Enclave were in charge
yeah.
of the death clause, and we were under the impression that the death clause could have been under House's rule. But if they're not under House's rule, why would the death clause be at House's doorstep? So
Yeah.
I
Well,
think that's
initially I
great.
said I think Hank's rule potentially to like keep people out if he's in the
Right.
base under there, but we still haven't had confirmation that the bases are like like wherever House is and wherever Hank is are next to each other. So we don't know.
Yeah.
So
Let me ask you this: did this episode make you feel more confident that you think House is dead, or did it not change anything really? Because we didn't maybe get too much more information.
I don't think it changed anything, but I
Mhm.
think based on the last episode and this episode, like the House importance, like his importance to the present day is maybe taking a backseat.
Mhm. Okay,
Like
I
I
like
think
that
the
now.
big twist is that the major villain of this season was like our villain or whatever you want to call him, new character, new faction, whatever, was House. We thought he was going to play a huge role in present day. And
Right.
like we haven't really got him in present day at all yet. And I'm a
True.
little worried he's not going to be here at all. I think we'll see what happens to him.
Right.
And, there's a lot to that story that definitely needs to be told too, but I'm not so confident that he is alive.
I like that, and I'm
All right.
I'm not backing down from my side either. I still think we'll get him in android form or some form, but I'm definitely not opposed to that idea. I think that would be an even probably bigger twist that I don't think I would have seen coming.
I personally love House as a character, so I'm hoping we get as much of him as possible. But Chase, I think that's a very good theory. You also said we're talking a little bit more about Hank potentially being House's double agent, but I think Chase, you kind of just threw it out there. What if Hank's a double agent for the Enclave? And I'm just putting it together like he seems pretty cozy and at home with this territory that's being patrolled by the Death Claws, which we are led to believe the Death Claws are of the design of the Enclave. That would be a very good kind of like, I don't know, change your perspective sort of thing if Hank was the double agent for the Enclave, and in the beginning of the season, he was maybe trying to contact the Enclave when we thought he was trying to contact House.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have all the supporting evidence for such a theory, but that would be a good one.
I think that's a potential too, because I've been considering the people that know about the FEV could potentially be Enclave people. So you think guys like Ronnie, potentially Steph, I don't know. She has a connection to Hank, right? Those three have more in common with Hank and what his motives are potentially than anyone else. So they could all be involved in this whole Enclave, secret
And
mission. We just don't
we
know.
do know that Steph wants one of those private keepsakes of Hank's.
Yep.
Which could have a tie-in to the Enclave.
We're gaining
or
some
something like
traction
that.
here, boys. We're gaining some traction here.
Well, I guess, and when Norm looked at the computer and saw the information about the FEV, that was on Barb's computer. So Barb would have some knowledge of that too, which kind of throws a wrench into it. But at the same time, Barb was answering to the Enclave in that dark room meeting between all the big corporations. So Barb at least has some communications to the Enclave.
Yeah, I guess to that point, she might not be an agent, but she's definitely a tool that they're using.
Right.
And obviously, like, we know she's not willingly doing these things. So.
That was good.
Yeah, juicy.
That was real good, guys.
Juicy.
Yeah, that was good. Last episode was better, but this one was good.
Definitely.
Gentlemen. I don't know. Any last minute hitters for me?
I think I'm set personally.
Love it. All right. As always, if you like what you heard, hit that follow or subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating here on Binge Empire, and check us out on our other feed. That is going to be The Core, covering all things Apple TV Plus. And you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, the Apple Podcast app, or wherever else you may find your podcast. Once again, we are Bingetown TV on the Binge Empire feed. And thank you so much for listening.